Very nice to be here. Thank you. Thank you very much, April, and thank you for the introduction. Yes. Oh, thank you for the introduction, and thank you, April. Okay, and I'll talk a little louder, I guess. Can everybody hear me if I talk this way? Yes? Okay. A little louder. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll shout. I've titled my presentation "Augmenting Things," which is also the slogan of my little company that I've created to kind of accommodate some of the crazy work that I do. My company is called Isovist, and the tagline is "Augmenting Things," which has to do with a lot of the work that I'm doing is headed toward, and it has been for some time, headed toward augmented reality and virtual reality. So I've sort of naturally gone into this. So part of what I'm going to show you is a lot of work that I've done over time. I'm some going back to the earliest as 1979, when I started with Harry Marks in Hollywood. I wanted to point out that the interactive things that I've been working on there's two things involved, two big things. One is what you see, the display on the screen or the thing you see in air that has to be designed. So as if there are graphic designers here, that's what we are doing. We're designing for things that sometimes are floating in the air. They're not on anything, but they may be on a surface on a screen. And then that interconnects with what we do. There's the inputs. That could be a phone. It could be your computer. But everything that we do has an interface today. So that part, so there's those two things work together, what we see and what we do. And I'll talk a lot about those two things. But I'm going to start with some history. And I've done a lot of projects that, for me, going even way back there, I was thinking kind of about this. And that term graphics in space was something you'll see it, I'll point it out in things that weren't even around. We didn't even know what augmented reality was. So this is a little timeline of my sort of my history there. I started around 1978 in Hollywood, working for a gentleman named Harry Marks, sadly who passed away this last year. But he led a grand life. He was an amazing designer, a real true pioneer in television design in particular. And so right out of the gate, I was still a graduate student at Cal Arts. I went right into working with this guy who was working with ABC Network at the time, and these big networks, and really kind of inventing a new thing that we were calling motion graphics. That was a new thing. I think previous to that, we may have seen things from Saul Bass, who was doing maybe a few TV and film logos and trailers and identities. But that was, I can say that in the late 70s, all of us who were started then, we were kind of inventing this new thing, and it used new, and in fact, it's 1979. You can imagine that the Mac didn't come out until 1984, which is like years after I started. So a lot of the work was in film and other things. So going down, motion graphics and computer graphics is what I worked on right at the start, but that's really, really early. I mean, you would not believe what we had to do to execute and make images in computer graphics. It had nothing that looks like what you look at today. But that was the fun of it. We were inventing this medium. So motion graphics, computer graphics. And then in the 80s, I did a lot of work with Harry as the computer graphics got better, and then a company named Pacific Data Images, which is up in the Bay Area. They're not around anymore. They became DreamWorks. They were doing television. They were really started by Harry Marks, the guy I was working with. So I was flying up to San Jose all the time in Sunnyvale and designing this stuff up there on computers. And I'll show you a few examples of that in a second. Some key points for me are around 1990 was when I made some of my first interfaces for interactive things. And one of them was for a very famous gentleman named Robert Abel, and it was a Columbus project. It was sponsored by IBM for schools, but it had all sorts of things with laser discs and all sorts of technical equipment to kind of to learn about. It was an anniversary of Columbus. So that was, which was made for 1992. So that was the first thing, and the other things, but I started to work in interaction design. And a lot of it was, now you can see that right down, I don't have it, I have another chart I'll show you. It wasn't until 1995 that we actually had the internet. I mean, that was sort of it was becoming mainstream. So some of this stuff I was doing in 1990, imagine, is done without the internet. So my life is watching these major things emerge, which is a really fun part of what I've had to, my adventure in life. But, formed a company in 1998, moved to London 2008, and then I'm, now is down there somewhere. So my company, which got really big, it was less fun for me because it became like around 1,500 people, a huge advertising. My company was acquired by WPP, so it became more about marketing, pure marketing, and less interesting to me. So I've now, over the last 3 years, just doing kind of really interesting projects that can either come my way or I can seek out things, and I've got my ability. I work with some really great people now. Later on, I'll point to some of the people here who work with me right now remotely. This is the new generation of work where I'm in London. I've got designers here, 2 of them are here, who are here in Los Angeles, and the client is in Vietnam. So there's quite a spread of time there, but we've kind of worked it out. So those are the key things. I put a few things in there that to me are really important. Certainly the big one there is the internet. That really has changed everything right there. That is a big deal. I also put the movie Tron back there, which is, as you can see, I was around before that, In fact, I was working at the company, Robert Abrams, which was making Tron when I was there. I was using the same computers to do kind of car ads and other stuff. And another one which is important to me is the iPhone. The iPhone to me is a pivotal change in interaction. It's now about touching and swiping and directional. That's a big, big deal, and you probably know you probably experienced that when that happened. To me, in the field that I'm in, that's a big deal. And then some other ones which are emerging after 2010, you've got Oculus Rift, you've got some of these crazy new things, you've got HoloLens, and some of them like HoloLens, and when Google Glass came out, those companies brought me in, flew me out there to see. I saw some of these things. I saw a really early version, 3 years before it came out, of the HoloLens down in a basement up in Seattle, and looking, and this stuff you put on your head it wasn't even Wi-Fi around stuff, so it had cables coming out. I felt like a diver in those big diver suits, but it was amazing what they were doing. Now that's gotten down into something smaller, but it's still, to me, too big, but we'll see. Over time, that's going to get smaller. So this is a chart that I start with sometimes, and I'll go refer back to this. It's over time. In other words, long ago, before you guys were born, all there was print. We just had, and if you were in design, you were doing print design. And that's where I was headed when I went to school. I went to Cal Arts. I was in graphic design, and it was at Cal Arts that I started to play around with motion and computers and other things like that. So. But notice that it's a flat. It's intentionally a flat thing. If you got a piece of paper, you print something on it, it's flat like that. When photography came around, which was around, say, 1850, when photography emerged, that was this new thing. But it was capturing real things, so you sort of felt like you were looking at something that was through a window. But we had that picture frame there. Everything's a picture frame. And then moving down to film and video, everything started to move. So we've got motion graphics, we've got film and video and all that. Then IMAX-like stuff with big screens, we kind of wanted to get it bigger and bigger and kind of wrap around it so we could be sort of immersed in it. We wouldn't see the edges of it. But you can see where that's sort of going. You kind of want to not have this, but you want to kind of step into it like that. And an important line right there is when it became interactive. So the orange dot is a person, and conceptually, in the interactive era, you're reaching your hand and you're moving stuff around. You're doing something. You're not just watching stuff. You're actually doing something with it, with an interface of some kind. And then we've got the new ones, which are this whole area down in here is where we are right now, which is a really interesting area because it's very chaotic, in my opinion. We're still figuring it out. Nobody knows what's going on in this area. You're looking at crazy things like VR, which I find extremely crude and uncomfortable, as you probably know, but they're pretty cool what it does, but who knows where that's going to go, and AR and other things. So that's where we are now. We're in this mess down here right now. So let me jump back, and I'm going to show you. This is 1979. Many of you were probably weren't even born then. So I graduated from CalArts, and I was working with Harry Marks. This spot I'm going to show you, I'll just run it. It is, I think, one of the very first commercials done with computer. It was with a plotter that would plot this stuff and make it into film. But it was computer built, so it's computer animation. Unfortunately, it was for France, so it showed in it's Philips Auto Stereo. I've left the audio off so it doesn't get in the way of this, but it's not a soundtrack on this. But really interesting. I mean, this was a groundbreaking thing. I mean, you can't. When we saw this, got the film back from having it cell-flopped onto film, created by the computer, we were just astounded. We found this guy who was named Colin Cantwell, who was up in Saugus Newhall area, who was this weird programmer guy who was doing works on Evans and Sutherland, wireframe things to do flight simulations. So he programmed this stuff to do that. Really early stuff. Then now we're into 1985. Not much longer, but it had really advanced. So this one is the NBC Sunday Night Movie. And it's a great soundtrack. It goes on and on. Kind of overdone music. And then at the end, you got the peacock coming up. But look at the quality of the animation. This is a long time ago. And this was done by PDI up in the Bay Area. And that's the only one I'm going to show. There's another one I did for Harry that was for ABC. So for this decade of the 80s, I was the king of the big graphics, like these big TV graphics. That was the big thing, because they could. I wanted to show you this, because these are the storyboards that I drew. The frames are actually about this big. But what I feel like I pioneered was, I bought one of the first things for the Mac, because this is now the brand new Mac, it was just this baby little thing. And there was a program, a 3D software from France that was called Space Edit. A little buggy, had to find workarounds, but I was using it to make my storyboards. I would get the frames I want in wireframe and then print them out and use white carbon paper and trace them and create these things. So all of my colleagues were going, how do you get this great perspective? I mean, things like this, because I was just putting in the computer and drawing from there. But that was a new thing at the time. I did pioneer that. So here's that piece you just saw. Kind of a computer assist on that. So in 1993 was an interesting year. That was the interesting thing to note. This launched in 1993, a TV product. It was the Time Warner Full Service Network, and it was the set-top box that you got to use was this SGI Indigo or something. There was some expensive, like $5,000 computer that was used, and SGI thought, well, we're going to blanket the United States with all these, and we're going to have state. So I'll show you what it looks like. It looks like this, but what was unique about it is I was already working in television, so this is an interface for TV. So it looks very TV. It was this carousel. You moved it around in kind of a space with a reflection on the floor. So that was kind of a new thing for TV. I mean, it was kind of flat stuff before that. So it's really kind of looking at a space behind there that you're putting this stuff in. So the project, from Time Warner was a huge investment. And it failed because 1995, the new thing came on the block, distribution by the internet. So that completely wiped out the model of this, which is going to be another model. So, and it just it didn't survive. So this next part, I think this is one of my favorite projects during the 90s, 92, 94, 98. I was creative director for CBS Network on the Winter Olympics. And this is the last one. Each of them, we used a lot. Our client guy, Doug Toohey, back in New York Sports for CBS, was really adventurous. And we did motion capture, we did whatever the newest technology. It's pretty amazing. And another kind of pivotal thing at this time, if any of you are into tech and programming and computer graphics, this was all of the graphics I'm going to show you for this were built over the year of 1997, which was the pivotal year in Hollywood, where previous to that, everyone, all the studios that did special effects, everybody had SGI, these very expensive machines with a kind of closed system. But that's the problem. We're closed systems, and it just wasn't a model that I think works. But they were making a lot of money, and that's where they were. Almost in 1 year, in 1997, all of Hollywood threw out those expensive machines and got PCs, and it was the beginning of 3D Studio Max, and that's how this was all built. But this was built, this complex stuff was done on machines which were new, so we still didn't have, so that was a real pivotal year, but it was a really interesting one that changed. So this is a sample of some of the graphics done for it. So I look at this and think of it as in the computer, I'm making these worlds of iconic things and moving around them and titles. So you build a world and you live around in it. The next thing is showing some of the motion capture thing. We designed this character, which was like a brushstroke character, and then applied. We did a data processing of a motion capture of a real figure skater doing this stuff. So. These are some of the other opens. Maybe I'm going to click past here and go to this next one. So this one is one of the simulations that we built. For example, this was the bobsled. So being able to do these kinds of things, we take the audience down, and the important thing to me is a lot of the graphics you're seeing here, labels of curves and this arrow coming in there, they're in the scene. They're not something that's flat in front of you. So that was kind of thinking almost like AR, where you're putting information into the scene out there. The other thing we did, this is probably the biggest project, we took 6 months, and this is Nagano, Japan for 1998. And it's the men's downhill, the mountain. And we got these high-res topographic maps of it, and they looked something like this, but we had really high-res. They were like could cover a wall over there. And then we had to digitize that. And we built the mountain because we knew where all that information is. So this is the starting shot right there. You'll see where we defined what the names of the curves were and the other stuff. So this is real information, and we're sort of augmenting it in a way. We actually talked about the possibility of augmented reality in the future, where you could, with your glasses, not the phone, but some future glasses, you'd be able to see these layers of information that you want, on publication. So here's the animation here. We do kind of a move up there and label all the parts. Here's the vacuum tube. So all of this is accurate, all the stuff that's there. And we worked 6 months kind of building this thing and then planning for the animation. So that's a lift spot up there, the cabin, and we go up at the top, and eventually we're going to get to the top to start. And then we're going to take a trip down it. So remember, this is 20 years ago doing this. So the elevations and other information is actually in the space. You're traveling through it. So it's experiential in the same way that AR and VR are. So here we go. So traveling down the mountain. I think I'll just jump ahead here like this. And this is down at the, just cut a bit further. We're almost to the end. There's a narrow spot in here. I love the spot where the camera goes behind the trees. We'll go past them. So it was really trying to make it feel like some of the times it's you're skiing, and then other times you pull back and see the little character going down. And there's up in the jump there, and then you hit the ground here like that and spin around. So that was quite entertaining. What was interesting to me was this is the same thing that when the games were over, I took a shuttle bus and they'd open it up to the public again. And so I rented some skis I could ski pretty good. And I went up to the top, and I skied the course, but I knew it because we built this thing, you know. So it was like going from virtual to like a real thing. It was kind of an interesting experience. Does everybody have 3D glasses? Because occasionally we're going to, the way you hold it is hold it with your right hand on that thing, then you'll be properly there. So you're seeing this 3D thing there like this? So what I wanted to point out was a really interesting thing that happened there, not for the public, but for experimental. I think it was Hitachi they were recording, I'm going to do this here like this. So watch that come forward like this or move back. So that's kind of it. You have to look at the rest of it. We'll have some more in a minute. But what happened was, I'm the one who designs graphics, all that kind of graphic stuff you see there, or other kind of names, all that information system. And it's usually flat to the screen. And when I watched it was a live broadcast in high def of the ice hockey. It was that window, if that was what I was looking at, it looked like it was a hole cut in the wall. And the guys were over there. I mean, it's so real looking, you know. But the graphics came forward. So it was the first time where I could see that difference, where you could sort of focus, like that's the closer position. So when you look at something that's fairly close, the other part drops out. That doesn't happen when you watch regular TV. It's all in focus and it's all kind of busy. So that use of Z-space is actually quite interesting. So let's see. So around 1999, just after that, I think we did our second or third project. This one's for Sony in Japan. So this is a web portal, broadband portal. So this is the homepage thing with stuff on there. But in fact, David back there, raise your hand, David, worked on this. That's his design back there. So, and moved around in this, but what happens in there, we were starting to experiment with an interface where you go from one side to the other. It has some meaning. It's this stuff over here, and then you go over like that, and then you move something forward like that. So it starts to be the concept that I call spatial navigation. And go up a little bit later, like in 2001, if you remember when Battlestar Galactica, the new series, came out, it was really good. But we were involved with the Sci-Fi Channel, who created it, with Microsoft, who was looking to just, you watch that on an Xbox, part of TV. It's sort of a game controller as well. And then we worked with VU Games, who made a game for this, in the fight scene. So this is, this particular piece I'm going to show you now is, back here, the way you navigated it is rather than a main menu, you started to understand that there are 4 kinds of things you can do. The one we're going to go to first was down the bottom. That was called experiential game things. And then something else was like a biographic of people, who tell you about people. So so you just hit the arrow key if you're using a remote control or the knob thing on your game controller. So this is, we're about to go into, we press the button there, and it takes the narrative of a fight scene, and the audio stays on that, but it throws you into the game. So you're actually in the same game over there. It's on rails, so you can't kind of do a major thing and blow up the ship before it's supposed to blow up. So the story continues. But it was this combination of a real thing in real time and playing a game that really opened some doors that we did later on. I'll show you with EA Sports. We did a lot of work with EA Sports. Anyway, so that's what that is. So this is the scene. The ship got hit. It got exploded. And it was some damage. So when you press this button, you go back, and it has it's kind of a 3D button. It brings up a 3D model of the ship. So whatever's happening right now, they're talking about those people and those cells down there are going to be sacrificed so the whole ship doesn't burn up. So all that drama's going on. So you're able to move that little thing down the middle up and down that changes that position of the ship. So you're kind of controlling the movements there. So I mentioned, so back around, I can't remember when we started, maybe 2006, 2007, doing some really fun work with, run here with EA Sports, based up in Vancouver, British Columbia. And so this is, we rethought the beginning. This is the, while you're downloading the game, we brought all those things to life, and they had already been working on the idea of what they called a cathedral of basketball. This is for NBA. So you had this space that was an abstract kind of space that you could do practice games and other things. But the new thing that was happening was that they had made a deal with ESPN to integrate live games in there as well. You'll see how you can bring those up. So those are kind of promos that are running. At the end, you'll see this sort of split apart, and you've got this right and a left. The left side is the game world, EA Sports. The other side is the ESPN world. You can get a kind of a guide and see what you can bring in of other kind of live things. And I think probably their goal was to really, at some point, bring those together so you could sort of play along with the real game that's going on and in real life. And through technology that maybe doesn't exist yet, they could, you could follow that directly in the game world. So, kind of interesting things. So this is, we've been in practice game. We're going to quit it, and we're going to start the game, and you go through the things you have to choose. You have to make a selection of your team and other things. So notice we're on the left-hand side, and then when you move the cursor over, eventually to the right-hand side, you move around, and now you're on the other side in the world of the real stuff. So these are real games that you can pick. You'll grab one of them, and then we'll move back and continue to do our picking there, so like that. So that was some of these were really fun things. But one of the things I want to point out as we're going along here is everything so far: television, things on my computer, things on my phone. The media is in a rectangle, it's in a frame. So that's what I think is going to change. There's a concept of what I would call moving through the window. Which is what happens in virtual reality. I mean, you see no frame anymore. You've stepped inside the media, and you're walking around in it like this. There is no thing here anymore. So another perspective of that is to take it the other way and say, rather than the audience moving and stepping through the frame, this is the technology. So that little frame represents a screen or some kind of technology that creates an image. Something's making that image occur optically for your eyes. So when you get down to interactive media, you kind of have to get closer because sometimes your computer, you've got to be right here. TV, you can sit back with remote control. Augmented reality down here brings that ideally up really close. I mean, today, as you know, augmented reality means your phone. I mean, that's what kind of everybody can do with this. So you do this, you look through the camera. But this is a really crude step to where it's headed. I mean, I can guarantee within the next year or two, we're going to be seeing, even from Apple and others, glasses. So we'll be able to do that without having to hold up your phone. You'll just, I don't know how we're going to, what I'm working on right now is how do you interface with that? Because the thing is gone. I can't touch this. It's now, I'm seeing something with my glasses. So big question, how do I interface with that? So discuss. But that's what my career is about right now. So, and anyway, so from the viewer's perspective, the window disappears because you kind of step into that. So it's kind of like this. Over time, we're going to step into that now, and it's gone. So now, looking to the future, and I do a lot of work where I'm thinking for companies about 5 years from now or something like that. Then what's going on down there? So it could be that in augmented reality, where it's already headed to be glasses, that's very soon. And there's some out there now. You can buy them now, certain kinds. So that means that's here. So that means I don't have to hold anything anymore. I can see stuff, difficultly interact with it. But the convenience of that is really amazing. So we already have technology that does contact lenses, same thing. So that little screen thing is now on your eyes. Instead of being in front of you, it's on you. It's like, it's not in you yet, it's right there. But I actually think that, I don't know, maybe it's 20 years from now, that's going to be eye implants. That's what, I mean, it's kind of a logical step. I mean, miniaturization of screens and stuff. So it'll be so useful because being able to sort of see stuff, see the internet, see the notification stuff, without having to work with us at all. And what a lovely thing with the people walking down the sidewalk, not like this, but they're actually going to be looking at you like this, because they're seeing all sorts of other stuff. But at least maybe people stop doing this, which is a good thing. But there's even a step beyond that where, who knows, maybe that's a brain implant thing or something. I'm talking a long time from now. But there are conveniences to what I call embedded technologies. And the first step, as long as you don't have to hold it, I think these are wonderful, wonderful things, but I've got to hold this thing. I've got to track it. You're going to lose it. I'm going to drop it. Once this gets to be something where, and glasses, device for AR and embedded, that's going to move where eventually we won't need these anymore. We'll see it, we'll just see that stuff, in front of us. We won't need the phone anymore. So the hardware companies eventually are going to have to really drastically change what they're doing. So let's talk about the input. I talked about before. There's what you see and what you do. So the inputs are an interesting kind of space there. So I think these are the two input devices which have heavily influenced my thinking. This is my background. That's because I did a lot of work in television, TV interfaces. And I'm not sure if anybody uses those anymore. I don't know, does anybody use a TV remote control anymore? Yeah, okay. I was wrong. Did everybody watch that on their phone or something? But this thing, the thing for me is I talk a lot about up, down, left, right as an understandable concept for navigation. It's just easily understood. For me, that came from the remote control on a TV. That's how you click up. Most of the stuff you can navigate by clicking down, left and right. And you don't have to look at anything. You're looking, it kind of is remotely doing something. What I think is profound, I'll show you a little bit later, the work that I've done. I created a Kickstarter project for augmented TV, and I'll show you that. And what it uses for the phone is it treats the phone as a trackpad. So I can be watching the TV and doing this. I don't have to look, there's nothing on the screen. I'm just swiping different directions. It's swipe-based and moves things around so you navigate with the trackpad. Anyway, so those two things I think are really the biggies. Talked about up, down, left, right, which is embedded in thinking. The other direction is the Z-space, this way, which has been something I've dealt with in my career for a long time. In computer graphics, you've got X, you've got Y, that's flat right here, flat plane. But once you start dealing with this, how do you navigate that direction? What does it mean? What is that? And I can show you a laundry list of projects that, and those of you guys who work for me, it'd be smart and Jeremy, because I've done so many of these, and I've tried different things. And I feel like I know some that work, and some that don't. So I did work on, and first of all, how are we doing on time? What sort of time do we have? We're good. Okay. So I worked on Minority Report, but I always like to make it. So many people in my own company used to say all sorts of things that I invented, and I did this and I did that, and I go, no. I mean, there was a big team of people. And I did not invent the gesture thing that they saw there. I did work later on on some things I'll show you, but there's some things that I did that hit the cutting room floor, because I was working on, it was more than 2 years before the movie, and it was concept work, which I love doing, just sort of imagining what is it like 50 years from now, So we all thought it would be gesture, but we thought at the time it would be this stuff that he's doing. And I can tell you right now, do you want to sit at your couch and be doing this? Or do you want to be in a public place doing this? No. It says, So it goes in a different direction. But in fact, I believe in the fingers and the hands and like that. It's even if it's just swiping on a trackpad or something. But and here's what I did. A designer who worked for me at the time designed this. Matt Mulder. I'm not sure where he's up in. Not sure where he is right now, but anyway, he's in Seattle. He has been in Seattle for a while. Yeah. So anyway, we designed. The idea here is that gesture is not this, but it would be something like signing, like this, because things can pick up motion detection and know what you're doing like this. So there would be a language. It would be so important that we would learn a new language. That's the idea. So some of this just is an arty take on looking at what are the symbols that we see. That would mean something. You go like this. And so we communicate with this, which is what I call, the key word here is discrete. It's like when we're navigating our phone. You're not broadcasting everywhere what's going on there. You don't want to do that, you know. So you don't want to go like this with your phone. Everybody sees what you're doing. So, but this is, oops, wrong one. So that's kind of what that looked like. We drew that. So now, the movie I'm going to show you now, you may want to take a look at this. This has been around a while from Google. It's called Project Soli, S-O-L-I. And if you Google Project Soli, they have a website that shows this stuff. So apparently it's a technology that somehow uses radar. I have no idea. I can't tell you anything about how that works, but that's what they're using. Rather than Wi-Fi and what other things. It's kind of motion detection radar. So my assumption is that to have it to work, it uses your hands. So this is from their website. But you're just moving your fingers with little gestures like this. That's a slider right there to kind of move the volume or to change. So you can imagine these are turning into little gestures going like this. So that's why I was thinking that in the future, if they did my idea on my report, it'd be like this, you know, like that. So, you know, and in fact with this, there's no reason why it could be a trackpad idea, like the phone, because the palm of your hand could be the trackpad thing, and you've got your finger going like this. I mean, this could all happen. So I said it here. Maybe 10 years from now you go, oh, that's what he was talking about. Who knows? But who knows where this is going to go. But I thought this is really interesting. It's worth looking at what they're doing with this. I'm really curious how that all works in there. After my report, because of the work that I did there, we did some work at the studio. And I'm forgetting where this was, still in Hollywood. But this is with PrimeSense, which is an Israeli company that had the technology to do motion detection like this. And in fact, it was their technology which was licensed and used by Microsoft for the first Kinect. So that's PrimeSense engine running that, and the first Kinect. So I did this with them. This is a TV interface where you get a little computer graphic hand showing how this is doing player controls. You pull like this and it would focus in a little tighter and move it around. So this actually worked. I don't know. Kate, do you remember seeing this in the studio? That's right. That's Kate Warjabé back then. So many famous designers. Jeremy back then. So we'll tell them a little bit more. Anyway.
Now, what is that doing? Why would you want to zoom in and out of the frame?
That was for picking a spot sometimes. I mean, for the idea that if you wanted to, some systems allow you to grab a little scene or to go right to the frame and snap a picture, you know, or something. So you're trying.
You didn't change the content or the meaning of it. It was just
No.
kind of a device.
No, it's just controlling, yeah. But it basically is player controls, which you do. I mean, you go past and you want to run it again. You want to go back and find a spot and like that. So the beauty of that, what you just saw, was if you had to do that with a remote control of some kind, this is my remote, you'd have about 6 buttons you'd have to push and look down at these buttons. You got like back, fast forward, back, forward, you know, all those different buttons. And all of that could be done with just one swipe of a finger, just like back and forth like that, and pulling it. So it really kind of simplifies that process anyway. There are some other things that were in that too, but my business partner on my Kickstarter project, which I'll show you a little bit, called In Air, is Vietnamese, and he was one of the founders of Emotive. I don't know if you know the company, which is still around, Emotive, which is the brainwave reading headset thing, which is transformed. That's what it looked like back then. But, so what I've talked to Tan Lee, who's now the CEO of that, you maybe know the product, but anyway, I talked with her about the idea that this is augmented input. In other words, I've used this thing before, and it's really difficult and tedious. It's difficult. It does work, but it's not something you play a game with, the kind of all fast-moving things. You just kind of focus on it. So I think that one of the great ways that they were doing this was, one of the things it does is it registers sort of the mood. It detects the difference between frustration and boredom. So you could apply that to playing a game. So you got the headset on, and if you're a really genius player and you get kind of bored, it picks that, it knows that, and it'll adjust the level of the game automatically. So you're not doing anything. You're not going to the thing, pressing the button, and you get down. And then if you're frustrated because it's too difficult for you, it'll adjust the game from that too. So that's a really interesting thing. That's happening, and you don't even know it. It's just picking up that stuff, that sort of cognitive stuff coming out of your head. Maybe cognitive is not the right word, but anyway, that's an interesting idea. So in that sense, you might be using gesture to actually control something, or some kind of game controller, but then you've got that reading the brainwaves out of there, and it gives what I call layered input to what's going on. So this is the project. I'm trying to remember how many years ago. It seems like 6 or 7 years ago in air. We first started this, and interesting on a couple of levels. One of them was it was my experience in doing a crowdfunded Kickstarter project. Has anybody else done one, a Kickstarter project or crowdfunded thing? You know, it is not fun and not easy. It's a lot of work, and but it was a really great experience. We were fairly successful on one hand. It didn't live long enough because we'll use the glasses in a second, because when I designed this, we made it work on a regular TV, but it could also work and augment the television show you're watching. It would look like augmented reality because it was using a 3D TV. So you know where 3D TVs are today. I mean, nobody has one, so I've got one. But anyway, so it looks kind of like this. Things are layered in the front of the TV, and it moves back. So if you put your glasses on, I'll show you. This is a recording of one of the things. This is watching a movie. You're watching, and see it kind of, so it lifts out from the TV, kind of gives a separation. So it's kind of simulating what it would be like to actually, we called it augmented TV. It's like you're using augmented reality before we have augmented reality. And we learned a lot about how to, that was the whole lesson in how to navigate things. Essentially, it's a very simple concept where you had stuff on the left would come up, and it was very smart stuff. You would go to this movie, and it would bring up, it would already know what the movie was, bring up kind of links to go and get information and other things. So, and you've got things like the Skyfall, it's an info thing. We would go directly to Wikipedia and get free information. The cast thing is in there. The song was playing. We had audio identification, so you would know when Adele's song was playing, and link into Adele's site and get stuff. So it's this kind of link into all sorts of stuff around TV. So this one's so we're going through several things here. This is if you were bored and you went into your Facebook. So sometimes you just bring up your Facebook stuff. And the next one is interesting because it was see the Jaguar symbol at the top. There's a Jaguar, which is a product placement. So when that Jaguar goes across, you pull it across, you get information about the thing, you can buy it, you can a whole lot of stuff. So anyway, so I'll jump to the next one here. You can leave the glasses on. So this one is a documentary about the Voyager program. So you've got a NASA icon, you pull it over there, it links into NASA stuff. You even have a model in 3D, so you can swipe your finger across to move it around. So it looks like it's floating in front of the room there. So, and other things you can do. So, in fact, I think I can just kind of scrub through this and show you some of this stuff a little faster. So it brings out in 3 dimensions. You see solar system thing. It gives the route that it took, labels on the other planets. You can bring up photos. I mean, the usual kind of suspected things, but it really is augmented TV. So that's it for that. So, there'll be some more stuff later. But the other project that was really interesting was BMW started working with us, and I think David and Kate, were you guys around for the BMW stuff? Yeah, there was. I felt so proud of myself. It was, we attracted a client like BMW, and they flew out a bunch of executives. And it was our dinky little company working in the Hollywood Athletic Club. And we didn't even have a room big enough. We didn't have a boardroom. So we had to clear out a room and bring some tables in so that these executives came out from Germany, from BMW. But I mean, it was really a fun, I mean, that went for quite some years. And then after I left for London, I had to step away from, this is the Culver City office, was working on a lot of stuff around is it the I-Series, the two I-Series cars? Am I saying that right? The I-Series? Electric cars? Yeah, so a lot of the interior design, but I mean, it was also screens there and what's going on. So what I'm going to show you now is some things way back when this is a whiteboard session, and this one right there, that sort of area right here, is some thinking that I really believe about the car, because that drawing that's up there, this is the steering wheel, here's the passenger side, and every car has that bunch of stuff that's down the middle. And that can even include a useful screen or something like that. But in my opinion, every time you look down there, it's a dangerous moment. Your eyes are off the road looking down there. So the concept that I was looking at was kind of, this is a kind of wireframe of a car, so the driver's side, and starting to look at where your hands for input and what do you focus on for driving. And the goal was to move all that stuff, not to be down there, but it strategically occurs in head-up display. Not stuff all the time, but it's useful stuff, which is a really interesting design assignment. So this is one where I sort of, your sight line where you should be looking is up there. So along the perimeter of that, kind of like that, is where this strategic information would come about driving. So, and I always say that there's two types of information. One is critical for driving, which is speed and other kinds of things like that. So, other kinds of information. The other stuff I call life stuff. It's the temperature, your radio. We all use that stuff, but to me, because when that's sitting down there, it's dangerous. So, how do you strategically move that there? So this arc in here was to say, this is where that's the zone where you're able to sort of touch things. And of course, the core central thing is the steering wheel. Hands on that. So anyway, so I was looking at sort of hand-driven stuff. Okay. Some new things that I've been doing, and some of these are just early experimental. This one is a story of Ada Lovelace. If you know who Ada Lovelace was from the 1850s, she's said to be the first computer programmer, but of course that's 1850. There were no computers, but she was a mathematician, really smart, and based on her letters, we can see that she had already had plans for. She worked with a guy named Charles Babbage, and these machines that was giant machines that would run and do calculations and things. But she was the one who saw that what was called the analytical engine, to be able to see and sense what it was that the stuff that they're doing, which is almost like punch cards and things, could actually not just do additions, it could do other things, which is the whole software kind of idea, the processing. I'm not explaining that totally correctly, but you kind of get the idea. So what we're doing here is I'm working with some specialists on Ada Lovelace. The goal is to have deliver something, the story of Ada Lovelace, kind of digitally, in either a tablet version, using your hand like this, or in VR. So these are tests that are done to kind of see, in the VR case, which this is here, what virtual reality is giving you is a context. You're in different kinds of spaces. This is that building she was at that university, which is the University of London, University College London. And then that's the campus there, so but ignore the fact that these are kind of modern people there. But it was, and then what happens is, as you're moving around things up there, so there's some letters up there, there's a machine kind of, so over there, and as you move around in your sight line, things would occur, kind of smart things would bubble up. These little mini stories about certain people, other things over there. They're story markers. So those kind of bubble up, and they organize themselves. Those are the key things about something that knows the story you've been on so far. So there's a lot of smart stuff going on here. That it's kind of directed, driven story you're going through. And this is what the little animation looks like. Those come up, organize themselves, you pull it across, and this is what INAIR is about. You sort of navigate through a stack of things over there, the letters and some other things, you read it like that, and you move to something else. So what you're looking at in your gaze and what your head turn is now part of the navigation. So you're actually looking at things with your eyes, things and organizing, and then there would be some other device that you would use. If it's the INAIR case, you'd be using just a trackpad to do those motions that you see over there.
What would the scale be of this reality?
Well,
If you look at body tests, it doesn't matter where you are, how close you are, you can't know, right?
In this case, we were working on a size that could work.
Okay.
It's hard for you to.
What would that be? I'm
It's
just trying to get it.
Well, it's a relative term. Yeah, it actually is. But that's actually something that I'm enough of a graphic designer. It has to be able to be read. But there's also a case where we've done a lot of things with that. For example, one of the key features is her letters. We had access to the scans of the actual letters. But they're, as a matter of fact, I don't have some examples here, but they're somebody's handwriting, and they're really hard to read. So but they had already transposed. So you push a button and it just changes into the text, so you can read it. But I like it when there's living text, because if it's somebody, if you brought up something over here, and you're a beginning mathematician, you want some help on this, it'll lift out certain things. So it kind of gives living text that kind of comes out and explains things a little clearer. So it can live on different levels of a very experienced person and an unexperienced person. That living text idea is complicated and hard to explain, but if it works, I've done this before on some CD-ROM projects.
So, do you have to put that white outline around the frame?
You don't, but actually something has to happen. If you're looking around at things, something happens. They could scale up, they could, there's other things that can happen. I just put those because it's a way. If I was to look in this room now and use this thing, and I'm using this sort of I don't know what VR, but if I had this a 3D scan of all this room in here like this, and that's the background, and I'm moving around here like this, it knows what you're looking at, and that little. So that thing that goes over there, I look over to April Greiman, at their feet, and look like that, and then you can do something. So it says, it's that thing, double click, now it comes up and does something. So there just needs to be an indication of a highlight. It's like the idea of a highlight of some kind. I'm using boxes to be, it's like whatever you want.
I'm just erasing those in my mind.
That's right, okay. So here's another one where there's a timeline down there. You can move forward and kind of lay out things on time. It's a little hard to understand. It's just me showing these little quick things here. But this is a really interesting kind of model for telling stories. And they're spatially oriented. So this one, I have a number of our films. Can I show those?
Sure.
Yeah, these are wonderful. This is, I'm sure.
Do you have a composite one?
What's that?
Do you have a composite where we start?
Yeah, I've got, and I have some new 3D ones that Jeremy did back there.
Okay.
Raise your hand, Jeremy. This is like,
Jeremy.
yeah, Jeremy's like he's Mr. Space, Mr. Space stuff. So anyway, you know April's poster. This is from 1988, and I was explaining some of the difficulties in working with this was that's done so long ago, 1988. Look what we're doing back then. Do we even have a format that we can, and some of those things you had to like do huge scans of stuff, and I don't know. That was difficult. But what we did is we got all it together, and so these are some of the first little moves that after, and I built these myself. This was from done in After Effects. I was learning After Effects and did that. So, After Effects. Yeah, I was learning After Effects. So that's those first ones, and they just look like this. So, but it shows the idea. The concept here is that we're taking the elements and putting them in actual space, so that there is a place at the end of this when you go. Well, here's some other ones there. So, the smiley face goes by there. So this is ready to be augmented. So what Jeremy did a bit later on is we worked on gotten some text that goes with this, and some just to represent some things. Now this is also what I call the grand view. So if we were in a gallery and there was just a frame on that wall over there with a marker, I could take my phone. There's nothing there, but I can pull it up and I've got those elements in the gallery. So I'll show you this move here. This is if you're up really close to the wall of it and you're seeing the back elements. I'm just going to back up like this so it would look like this. So you're seeing, we interpreted the spiral of type and the other bits and other parts. So there's the gallery, and we pull back and then we see it. But you can also move around in that too. So, and that's the thing that I think about on an art level is, are there sort of, if this was a VR experience where you can control it, now if it's an AR experience, I can wander around and go anywhere unless there's something on the floor, go here or go there to get April's special view here. There's April curates some views, But the fact is, that can be kind of controlled in a VR world, because you can set these little nodes of where it would go. So I'm not physically walking with my VR. I'm moving around to this spot and to that spot. You're kind of doing a similar experience like this. I love these images. This is taking what Jeremy's. If you put your glasses on, 3D glasses, you'll see this in 3D. This is really interesting in 3D. So I'm going to run this here. So check this out. And you really get a sense of how dimensional this is. Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. So that's one view, like this. And notice we have extra elements. So this is where we've got other kinds of, it's kind of a quick view at the start, but putting in extra time. Now that's the pullback there. Let's see if I've got some other ones here. So you can take your glass off now. So those there. So this one now is the newer animations that have extra type and other things going in there. But these are from April's book that's on this. But these are just examples of what could happen in there. I mean, I really think there could be April's voice in here. She's explaining something in there that's there. And there could be a video that plays in there. Or there could be other stuff. So I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on this. But this world of things, it's almost like what you would expect to get from a book, but you're experiencing it and you're looking at it like that. So you're getting up close to it, like you're getting inside it, getting inside the thing in a way.
What's interesting is that poster for the Museum of Modern Art. My concept for the poster, it was an exhibition of posters called the Modern Poster, and at that time I was shooting video, and my concept was that TV is a new poster.
Yes.
Because that's the space that we were inhabiting at that time.
Yeah.
So it's great because on the one hand this looks really cool, but it's really old.
Yes.
That metaphor, just the video.
Yeah. But you could add new stuff to it. That's what I mean. I think that the enhancements and augmented things can be.
But putting the text that I wrote in there really.
Yeah. And we didn't have time. This was all done so quickly too. So we used the first thing that we could do out of the box really was already in the book. So we used stuff from the book and some things that we modified. But there's a world of things to do. And we're about to start on your next one too. I'm excited about that one.
Kind of fishy.
The fishy one, right? Big fishy. So now this is another piece from Jeremy back there, Jeremy Alcott back there. Let me explain this project. And David works with us back there too. This is a company that's in Vietnam. It's my business partner who I was in business with that Kickstarter project. And he's now got one of the fastest growing companies in Vietnam, which is a lot of things happening there, in tech. And he started out as a co-working kind of WeWork kind of company, but it's got a different model. It's really kind of a corporate level. There are banks that are using the service to install new frames into stuff. So for me, it's a playground to do things in there. So what this one is a new space. It's a huge space in Hanoi. I think it's called the Golden Seasons, but I always call it the Golden Retriever. I can't remember. I call it the Golden Retriever.
What do you call it? Golden
Retriever. Yeah. So they don't seem to be insulted by that, but anyway. So, but this space with Jeremy built. This one, I think you didn't even have it in the floor plans and stuff, didn't we? So Jeremy just saw some photographs, which I'd taken, and built this so we could move around in it. So watch this. So now we're able to, this huge atrium, because two stories. The concept is we're going to put physical elements. The rings up there would be physical, like that. They're hanging all the time. But you hold your phone up and you have all these interactive things that can, different types of things can happen. That's type hanging down like that. And there's a little thing that would come up that you can interact with that. So that's all done. So this is a whole AR installation in a huge space like that. So we're having a lot of fun with this stuff, so who knows where it's going to go. So, and there's other spaces. The spaces are quite large. They're kind of corporate things, and this is one of the biggest. But having the ability to put this stuff up and then design this stuff to hold your phone up, and next month there's a new one, or something. I mean, this, for example, on this idea, this one could actually be some of the companies that are there and some of the projects they're working on that's hanging down there. And that thing comes up, you can use that to navigate and select one of the rings over there from a different company and get something. So it's just, this could be a lot of different kinds of things.
Is it for commercial uses or is it educational? Or what's the goal?
Well, in this one, it really is kind of art. And in fact, I was even prepared to suggest to Nam Do is the guy's name, is that we need artist installations in here. So we could do an April Greiman thing in here. Yeah. Or that's right. Or local artist or whatever. But I mean, they already hang art in them. I mean, right. They're putting paintings or photographs of famous photographers in the area. Some of it's local, but I think it's a great space for doing things like that, and NAM supports that. So that's what I think. So.
We should probably use some time for
Okay, yes, and I'm almost done. So,
yeah,
so that's good. So I'm kind of looping back to 1926 now because I've been so much into the Bauhaus and some of the things that I've been talking about here, I'm going to talk more with April's class. If any of you are from April's class, it's on Thursday. But we're going to talk about that book, which is one of the books from the Bauhaus. And it's about the theater of the Bauhaus. And so when I've been looking at all the things I've been showing you here, that some of them, it's like a theater. And what's interesting about this particular theater design was that it could allow the play, whatever the thing is, to be right in the heart of it. It's in the middle of it. And sometimes it's on the side, and then there's that kind of typical way in the back with kind of consents and stuff. But you look at this progression, and you're looking at the next step is, okay, we're going to be in VR, we're going to be in amongst that. And what I meant to show, I didn't put it in here, but an example of what I'm talking about is the wonderful Wim Wenders movie on Pina Bausch. If you've seen it, it's in 3D, but it's a fantastic film. It was done, she died, unfortunately, during the making of the film during that time. But there's wonderful dances, which I saw one that was for the Olympic Arts Festival. Pina Bausch was here for the Olympic Arts Festival. I've seen her performances. So the typical ones are, theater would be, okay, there's a line here like this. So the audience stays over here, and they're over there. So there's that place you can't cross that line, because this is the audience, and there's the performers. And we look at them over here. We can't get up there and look at them. But in the film, he took those performances, Ben Benner's, and there's a handheld camera, and he's right amongst them in that stuff. So it's really interesting, just that approach of like, we now, it's kind of like what I'm saying here. You've got this separation here, but what is that? I've seen some experimental operas and things where the audience is kind of standing around, and they got, it's awkward sometimes, but they're experimenting with that sort of blend. So you actually step through the line. So these are some images that I was working on with a project that's for this arenas to be built, giant arenas. And what I was trying to show them was these arenas can have sporting events, or they can also have a U2 or a concert band. And in those cases, and everyone in the future has AR glasses. The whole area, they see this. It's not there, but they see it. So it's not just the stage. The art directors of that performance have the whole space like this. So here were just some concepts of what that could look like this. So it doesn't exist, but you see it. Everyone would, if they want to, everyone would see it. It could also be the game thing, where those live played games like this. Now this one, put your 3D glasses on. So we produced some of this in 3D. So the idea here was that everyone, the whole audience is playing this sort of space game with the solar system there. So there's that image. Now watch this. It's moving around in there in that space. So, and what's happening, we sort of made this up at the last minute, but it was like, this is a fake game here where you could play with your friends and other spots in the audience, and we're taking over a planet and somebody flies over to another planet. So it's kind of a general concept that wasn't worked out, but basically more about the visuals, where the entire space becomes this giant, place to have stuff happening.
So it's indeterminate or immeasurable space?
Yes, yeah. So in this stage, in this particular case, the actual physical stage might be down here, but it means that they can do stuff in the whole space here, using new technology. So these are my last slides. So just to sum everything up, this is a person, and there's our frame of kind of older technology, or even like their phone or TV, like this. And then, and I actually experienced with computer graphics and kind of other things in 3D, where now that screen, we actually feel like that's a real space. And that space is like a stage. So with new technology, we're actually moving onto the stage around this. It engulfs us. And then the actual stuff goes away. We're just in the middle of it. So that's the new sequence for the future. So should we do some question answer? Yeah. Yeah?
So it's funny that you mentioned Lovelace, because we're currently going through a study of modernism and how that moved into postmodernism.
Can you shout out the question? We can't hear you here. So you shout it out.
My question is, with a lot of these new technologies, there's a lot of pushback on maybe, and I was bringing up postmodernism because some things could be seen as not just too avant-garde, but maybe too futuristic, too off the beaten path, more using the different gestures and whatnot. You used to have a TV where you have to go like this to kind of move with your finger, and that kind of dynamic style. How would you as a designer, how do you approach those concerns? I know that you approached the BMW with making it better so that everything would
Well, the car with BMW is a really interesting case because, as I describe it, of all the interfaces that I do, no one is going to die from a bad interface on TV. You'll get mad at it, but you're not going to die. A bad interface in a car can kill you. So there's another level of making this thing really simple, really work. And what I have thought about that particular thing about the car is how carefully that would have to work to put stuff up here, because if that isn't designed properly and something comes up over there and it distracts the driver and they have a crash or something. So what is happening there? And there's and one of the things that we did is followed on the car theme there is that stuff would be just strategic things. It's not like you see a movie, this stuff is beeping at you everywhere. I mean, it's not going to be like that. You have to have extremely intelligent systems behind it that puts just what you need there. I actually drove, by the way, this is back in 2005, I think, a BMW head-up display sedan. I drove it. And I was shocked at the optics and how good it was, because, and it just was one thing. It was just the speed and maybe a direction thing. And I'm driving along, and I thought, I was expecting it to be like a little reflection in the window, right there. But as a matter of fact, your eyes need to be focused 100 feet out there. And that's where it was. It was way out there. And I didn't have any glasses on. I don't know what they did to do that. I thought that was amazing. But to me, that's that Z-space thing. So when you're in a real world of real information, in that world, it is either here, or it's there, or it's way out there. I mean, you make a choice where it is. But my whole answer to that is simple. Everything's got to be as simple as possible. We've all seen things that are just kind of silly, too much.
It seems to me that it's yet another technology looking for a content.
Yeah.
Desperately. So, I mean, I think that obviously one that wouldn't require so much of being cautious about safety or life and death situations would be education. But for me, the most obvious
Use for it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But why does Vietnam? How do they have so much money to do this? Do you have any idea?
Yeah. Well, Vietnam.
Why there?
Yeah, because I've been back there. I went there a lot when we were the tech team for developing the in-air thing that was back there. So I've been there quite a bit over the last 7 years. And in the world, there's always a place. I think that some years ago it was India. There were really great. Sometimes it's because the government has really good schools, and so it's well-trained, programmers, things like that. So a lot of programming stuff went to India. That's happening in the next place is now Vietnam, and it's also at the current time. It's also because of the change rates and stuff. It's quite inexpensive to go there, so there's a monetary factor. But they're really smart. I have really. They're smart guys. I mean, Jeremy, you've been working with them back there too. I don't know if you caught that, but they're pretty sharp. I watched them and the stuff that they were building on the in-air thing, which is very complex stuff. So
So do you think they have excellent education?
yeah, the universities. Yeah, there seem to be some good universities putting out, and then there's just development going on. I mean, yeah, there's when you go to Hanoi, there's it's kind of the old part of town or other things, and then these massive giant buildings going up, and I mean it's like what you see in China as well.
I have a question, kind of just something I was thinking about when you were showing some of the more recent stuff, I guess 2000s, more of the AR, VR type stuff. I'm thinking like in design, there's been kind of a trend and movement of like starting towards like flat UI, flat design, and things kind of go back and forth between like realistic to flat, and I'm just wondering like, has there been, or do you think there will be any trend in AR? Has anyone say like, okay, like enough of this like super realistic depth? Like, have people tried doing something flat or different? I'm not phrasing this in the right way, but I'm thinking of how in design that happens. Like, do you think that could be a trend? Turning it on its head.
Yeah, and I saw what you're talking about in television, because I've been a designer of television for a long time.
Yeah.
And I remember, particularly in sports, I mean, how many of you know, like in sports back in the 90s or something, or even today, it was everything was like big metal type, and it was just all metal, and
Yeah.
that's what, again, like real objects or something, as opposed to like readable type.
Right.
It was almost unreadable, and there was a lot of that would come into the TV executives that I worked with Comcast and others, and I remember with Comcast, for example, what I really like, and the designers I've worked with, I'm looking like a Kate back there too, like it's simple type. I'm just but that's what the flat is to me. It's just simple, readable type. And I remember working with Comcast, and there were enough executives who had that sort of. It was almost like what happened. Remember the first stuff, the icons and stuff that was with the iPhone. They were kind of glass-like and had a little shine on them and all this other stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more skeuomorphic.
Yeah, that stuff. So and we were trying to simplify it because we were trying to do things like a readable guide. You've got this guide, a TV guide on your TV, and you're kind of distant from it anyway, and that needs to be just flat type, white type against the appropriate dark background is just beautiful. Works great. And I remember us delivering something with that nice, simple look, and then their department took it, and it came back with the sort of shine on everything like that, and you could hardly read it. And I went, oh God. So you struggle with this, but that's when you say flat. That's now I'm kind of a lot of the designs that you may have seen that I'm doing over there. It's flat text. It's on a plane, and what I try to do is have some reason for why, if there's a number of things going back, then they fade out, because you still have to read something in the highlighted front one, or why are things on top of each other, or this is a real design challenge. I mean, when you take the screen away, you take all this stuff away, and with AR, and you're just looking at some type floating in space, but with AR in particular, you've got all kinds of stuff going on here. So you have to. So what you see in AR is they'll darken. Many of them will darken, so that they can put light. That's what sort of works the best. Darken whatever it is. They look like sunglasses, basically. But they darken what's here, and then put white type on it, and it reads really well. Things like that. So that's.
I have a question. You showed an image of a stadium with people sort of viewing things in space, and I was curious if you find, I was imagining this kind of, pleasant passivity connected with spectacle, and that idea of, being able to sort of, I feel like there's so much of our life is about interactivity. Is there a tendency now towards passivity in terms of viewing and spectacle?
That last stuff, you mean like when you got an audience, a lot of people there, you mean?
But I guess that also could be influenced by the viewers, if the viewers are linked in somehow, as a group think or something.
Well, that's what this was. I mean,
Okay.
this was all quickly done,
Speculative.
more to show what the spectacle could look like.
Mm-hmm.
But I had things, what that represented on the side. You had your friends, so the concept was, and they want to do this in the future, when everyone has AR glasses. I mean, if it becomes that ubiquitous, but when is that? But it might be 10 years from now. But it means that people are playing those games over there, and maybe you're playing with somebody over there, and if you looked on the distance over there, it's bringing up kind of a leaderboard things or scores of the top people. So that is a group thing. That's a group game going on there. The more spectacle things were things that are when there's those images I was showing you when there's like a rock band playing or something, U2 is playing or something, then the experience you get is just sort of, it just levels more spatial and whatever than what you would see when they play it at a big rock concert or something, because there's a big stage, the stuff that goes on the stage, things for rock bands and stuff. There's lasers, there's light stuff, and it's a huge production. So when you take that and expand it out, so that's more sitting back. But definitely, the thing that I I'm personally not into, but it's really big, is those big, what do they call it? I'm forgetting the name, where gamers go there and the top gamers are playing live, and it's, there's a term for that. I forget what it is. What is it? Yeah. So, yeah, so that's definitely, well, that's more like an audience. They're not everybody's playing, but they're observing, you know, a live game. These guys, and like I said, cheering and whatever.
Generational.
Yeah. But some of those things, I could imagine what you're seeing around you is a lot of data, you know, about who scores highest and what sort of stats on things going on. That was certainly true of the work we were doing with sports. Sports stuff we've done a lot of, my company, with EA Sports. Even though we weren't working on the games themselves, there's a lot of, those games are about data. Yeah. The serious gamers, they go to that EA Sports NBA arena thing there. And one of the things they do in there, a practice game, but they have access to all the stats because they all talk who's the best and who's got, you know, it's a lot of data.
Are you primarily located in the entertainment world?
I have been in television for a long time. Television, and I was here in LA for a long time. My mind is more into, if it's TV, I'm into BBC and documentaries and things like that. You know, I really enjoy, you know, things like I showed on there. I mean, the documentary is astounding to me about what science has done to release the Voyager program with unlimited technology from years ago. And it goes to the other side of the solar system. You know, I'm just astounded at all that. I mean, but that's real stuff. Nobody's. I love the real stuff.
Also, I'm interested in how you feel this might influence humans to like interact in the physical world versus how some criticisms might be. But like, it's so easy to stay home personally myself. I'm like, you know, I'm watching a movie, not noticing it. And I'm interested in your perspective, how you feel this might allow humans to either interact more in the world or even stay home.
Well, just what I'm experiencing with my remote guys. I mean, David and Jeremy, and of course, in the distance is Jean, is the distance back there too. So, but I mean, these guys, and I'm in London, that stuff is getting so good. We use one called Whereby. It just changed its name. It used to be called Appear.in. It used to be Appear. Appear. It's really good. Yeah. But anyway, it's like you're in the room with somebody. I mean, so that connection is really good for doing work. And I think that technology like that helps people connect together, whether it's not just for work, it's for your relatives and connecting that way. My uncle Jim and Aunt Inez, they're very funny. They live in Phoenix. I bought them because they were kind of like many older people. They're challenged by this stuff. So I bought them an iPod Touch. So, and they have good Wi-Fi in their house. We got that working really good. So now they're calling me on FaceTime all the time. And I mean, it's like that new technology really does help bring distant people together a lot, more than you think. So, yeah.
Hopefully you'll get that from the VR experience is one experience where they're seeing maybe what somebody's seeing on the TV. If you wanted to,
Yeah.
we could experience it together or talk about whatever. So I would imagine that it wouldn't start to open things up more so that you can talk about, what I'm looking at is, you can go and you can see the same stuff I'm looking at, what we can discover together.
Share your phone.
We're not all walking around like this, or in our little houses like this. We're
Yeah.
maybe out in bigger space.
Sharing data.
Yeah.
Yeah, the VR one, I mean, I've thought a lot about AR and VR. I'm a big fan of AR. I think the AR one has the real legs. But one of the real benefits of VR is to be able to completely place you in another place. I mean, you really, so it is about eliminating everything. Eliminate the room, the people, whatever like this. And the things that I've seen where you're going across this wobbly bridge across a big canyon, you know, I mean, it's a real place. And those experiences are quite powerful like that. So, but that's that. I think in terms of like social experiences, I'd love to be able to see in the future where, like if your glasses were AR glasses and I had some on, and we have a conversation, we're just constantly kind of sharing something, comes up with, we're both looking at that stuff, you know. You can share it, turn it off, and the person can turn somebody else and like that. So.
Do you see sound coming into this?
Oh yeah.
When?
Oh yeah. All that stuff, the stuff that I'm working with, all of that has stereo sound.
But you're able to control it?
Yes, it is about control. You mean like the volume of it and whatever, that kind of stuff. So.
Two things. Dale will be our resident